Hey team, and welcome to another video in our Astrological Magical Elections video series. Today we are going to talk about the magical electional opportunities that we have available to us between our Cancer full moon on the 17th until our Aquarius New Moon on February 1st. I appear to be joined suddenly, and probably for not very long, by my co-host Lee, so enjoy him while he lasts. Oh, pets. He's already moved on. So talking about our elections for this period, since we're moving from a full moon to a new moon, of course, that means we're moving into our waning phase, and the moon's waning phase tends to be a little bit more difficult to plan astrological magic around, because this kind of encourages us to lean into more of the darker side of astrological magic. And what I mean by that is, while the waxing moon is for growth and gain, the waning moon tends to be for the opposite, for decay and for giving back. This makes waning moon magic and the magical talismans that go along with it more inclined to give up something, to get rid of something, or to let go of things, which, while an important part of life's process, is a part that people tend to not want to do as much, or don't, or are more resistant, I guess, to magical help in dealing with. Hi, Lee. And that's okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but we just have to remember that that is a part of life, that is a part of natural cycles, and we can make talismans, we can find help in some of these more difficult letting go or getting rid of, paying back kinds of processes. So that's really what we're going to focus on during our elections for this lunation and for any time we're in a waning moon period. There's Lee. Hug him. You want to lay down? You want to lay back? I'm going to show everyone how we cuddle. Oh, yeah. I have to do like 75% of my work one-handed because he wants to be held like a baby.
Ah! I need that hand! Give me the hand, Lee! Ah!
Thankfully, also during this time, the moon's waning phase will be occurring through lunar mansions that... Lee, can you stop knocking my camera around, please? Luckily, during this time, the moon will be moving through mansions whose talismanic purposes are a little bit more on the constructive-destructive side, so we'll be able to actually talk about and use some of those. This is in stark contrast to some of the more just like destructive talismans, who are a little bit more difficult to sort of like rehabilitate into something that is more conventionally useful, we'll say. But okay, we are going to go ahead and dive into our elections, starting with Western Europe and North Africa. They have two elections that we're going to talk about, and the first one is going to be for January 20th at just after 2 in the morning. This chart here is set for 2:04. And this is going to be for a 12th Lunar Mansion talisman. Now, the 12th Lunar Mansion is probably one of my favorites, definitely my favorite of the constructive destructive bunch. In that the 12th Lunar Mansion is very useful for separating oneself from something else. It's very useful for moving past things. It's very useful to assist in grieving processes. And it tends to be, what I like to use it more for is to encourage people to use it when it comes to defeating bad habits. One thing that I really enjoy about the 12th Lunar Mansion is that its image, a man fighting a dragon, is actually really useful. It kind of has this really... It's almost like a really fun metaphor for somebody who is fighting against something that they perceive as being more powerful than them, or having sort of like control over them in some way. And so I really enjoyed the 12th Lunar Mansion applications in combating bad habits, or, breaking bad cycles, or just things like that. So if you're, if it's sort of like the New Year's resolution time, right? So if your New Year's resolution was to like quit smoking, or, something like that, the 12th Lunar Mansion could probably be a really good asset to have in your back pocket to assist with this goal of yours. So there's the, break up bad habits or overcome kind of like your own dark side, I guess, or your dark impulses side of the 12th Lunar Mansion. But there's also a side of the 12th Lunar Mansion that's very helpful in helping people to let go, to get over things, to kind of initiate or assist, unblock, I guess, the grieving process. Especially when it comes to like what could have beens, or kind of a thing, or like what ifs. This sort of like letting go and dealing with missed opportunities, or relationships that didn't work out, to help yourself be ready for whatever the new things coming up in life might be. So any of these things and more, I think the 12th Lunar Mansion is super helpful for. Definitely one of the best of the sort of more destructive waning moon lunar mansions. And I recommend it for anybody who might be going through a difficult period trying to give up or move past something. So taking a look at our election for our 12th Lunar Mansion talisman, we have the moon placed angular in the 10th house, in the 12th Lunar Mansion, and at this time she is applying this trine to Mars in Sagittarius. And I really like this applying Mars trine, just because Mars itself is a planet that is more about separating, moving past, letting go things, creating rifts or severances between anything. Just like, it doesn't matter if it can be cut, Mars will cut it. And that matches obviously the kind of energy that the 12th Lunar Mansion is trying to create, a moving past, a moving beyond, a cutting oneself off from another thing. So the Mars energy here is very appropriate. I like the trine because it's an easier aspect. A square to Mars would have been a little bit more iffy, I think, in these kinds of contexts. Like, definitely appropriate, but making it a little bit more difficult to execute, or maybe a little bit more nasty, maybe the way to phrase it. And at this time, we look to the ruler of the first house. The first house is in Scorpio, which brings us back to this Mars here. Both Mars and the moon are unafflicted by, Saturn. The ascendant degree is unafflicted by Saturn. We kind of got a wide 10-degree square there, which is fine. Usually you want that to be much closer before you have to worry about it. And all in all, it's just very easy. We even have a nice trine from Jupiter to the ascendant degree, helping to kind of stabilize things and make things a little bit easier, softer on the person for whom the talisman is for. So definitely supporting that person in whatever it is they're trying to move beyond or move past. And unfortunately, that does look like it's going to be it for Western Europe and North Africa. It looks like they're only going to have the 12th Lunar Mansion talisman this time around. I did write down that there would be two, another one for a 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman. But now looking at it, at the chart, like the chart information I had written down, I'm not sure what I was looking at, because the 12th Lunar Mansion starts at 0 degrees Capricorn. As you can see, the moon is not in 0 degrees Capricorn. So I'm not sure exactly what I was looking at, or if I misunderstood something, or, if I was looking at a wrong thing when I wrote it down. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, guys. So unfortunately, Western Europe, North Africa, that's all that they're going to get. Actually, okay, I lied. I just wrote down the wrong sign. I see what I did. Okay, so recovering from that, Western Europe and North Africa will actually have a 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman. I just wrote down the wrong ascending sign, so I was very confused when I looked at the chart. But the 22nd Lunar Mansion is a talisman that is primarily about escape, about freedom, about health, about suppressing rumors. It's a very useful talisman in general. And while I generally associate the 22nd Lunar Mansion with the waxing moon energy, gain of freedom, that kind of thing, I have also kind of more recently come to acknowledge that it's a very two-sided, I guess. The gain of freedom and the escape from harm, like the escape and loss aspect of it, needs to be recognized. So much like Mercury, the figure that's classically associated with the 22nd Lunar Mansion, which can be, both a benefic and a malefic, and, both masculine and feminine. I guess it would make sense for a mansion that is so finely in tune with mercurial imagery to also be something that can be both waxing and waning, and be, generally be constructively helpful at the same time. So for this, for our election here today, we've got the moon conjoined Mars, coming to the conjunction of this exalted Mars, on the midheaven. The ruler of the first house is this Mars here as well. Mars and the moon are unafflicted. And so I really kind of like this moon-Mars energy, even if it's a little bit different from the kind of energy I would tend to lean into for a 22nd Lunar Mansion, I think, which I normally think of like applications to Jupiter or Venus, kind of like the protection that brings. But the Mars application, I think, is an interesting kind of spin on things, to where now it's more about like the boldness and courage to stand up for yourself, to demand, your freedom, or like, the end of the drudgery, things like that, to like make your case for needing better. Which I really enjoy. So now moving into our North American charts, of which we have a handful. And the first election example for North America is going to be for the 12th Lunar Mansion talisman. and that takes place on January 19th at just after 7 p.m. This is at 1914. And the 12th Lunar Mansion is, I've said this several times, but it's my favorite of the more waning moon-aligned talismans, just because I feel like it is the one whose imagery and whose powers are the most easily crafted to be constructive, even though they are inherently destructive. So the 12th Lunar Mansion is very focused on letting go, on moving beyond, on assisting with the grieving process, and its image of a man fighting a dragon, I think, is a really great metaphor for a person who is struggling to fight something that they see as being, bigger than themselves, more powerful than themselves, or having some kind of hold or control over them. So while there's also a side of the 12th Lunar Mansion that's about severance and separation and moving on, there's also a side of the 12th Lunar Mansion that is very helpful for assisting in breaking bad habits, or kind of like assisting us in getting rid of or letting go of the desire to partake in some of our more darker or self-destructive impulses. So especially this time of year where many people have made like New Year's resolutions, the 12th Lunar Mansion can be a really great help or assistance in seeing that resolution through, especially if it's something that is more like this year I'm going to stop doing this, or this year I'm going to quit this, especially if it's something that you see as being like an addiction that you need to break, whatever kind of addiction that might be, then the 12th Lunar Mansion is really great, and I definitely recommend it for that. Taking a look at our election here, we've got the moon in the ascendant in the 12th Lunar Mansion, and at this time she's applying this trine to Mars and Sagittarius. I really enjoy this Mars trine, of course, because Mars is the planet of severance and separation, which is exactly what the 12th Lunar Mansion is about, helping us, cut the thread that binds us or links us to that person, that situation, that emotion, that thing that we don't want to carry with us anymore. Mars is super good at that, even though, generally applications to malefic planets wouldn't be something that you would want in more growth-oriented talismans. Mars doesn't want to grow things, he wants to cut things back. There's a time and place for that, and this is that time and place to be able to utilize that. That being said, probably wouldn't recommend this talisman had it been like a square to Mars, just because I feel like that's way too combative or way too harsh. Looking to the ruler of the first house with Leo on the ascendant, this points us to the sun down here in Capricorn in the 6th house. And other than being in the 6th house, which is, not awesome, but fine, the sun's unafflicted by Saturn, not afflicted by Mars. Neither is the moon. She's separating the opposition from Saturn, so she's kind of left that behind her, which I think might be a fun little symbolism, a fun little symbol in the chart for somebody moving past something that was hurting them or trying to hold them back. All in all, a pretty standard, pretty good election. Definitely recommend it if you are struggling to let go or to move on of anything this time of year. It's a really great talisman to have to help us grow ourselves by letting go. The next electional opportunity for North America is going to be on January 24th at just before 6 a.m. This chart's set for 5:41 a.m. And this is going to be an opportunity for an Arcturus fixed star talisman. Arcturus is a pretty fun fixed star, definitely one of my top 5. And it is a star that is much more sort of like medicinally focused in a lot of ways. Arcturus is sort of like the star that it's basically like the sanguine star. So what I mean by that is in kind of your classical 4 temperaments theory, the power of Arcturus strongly influences the power of the blood, and the sort of general sanguine humor within an individual. So Arcturus as a star, as a fixed star, can be very helpful to help people recover from illness, to prevent illness, especially illnesses that affect the blood, which in Greek medicine can be a lot of things, since a lot of illnesses or a lot of diseases are conceptualized as being an imbalance in the blood. So Arcturus as a star helps to kind of keep that balance within the body, keep that homeostasis, make it more difficult to disrupt it, make it more difficult for somebody to become ill. But there's also like a mental component of it as well, to where Arcturus, because it influences and strengthens the sanguine humor, it also makes people generally happier. It's focused on increasing those more sanguine characteristics of like optimism, of hope, of jollity, of, just having a good time. So especially if you're somebody who is struggling with, depression or anxiety, and those sort of like more melancholic flavors of distress, which, who isn't these days, I guess. Arcturus can be a really great kind of counterweight to some of those more darker, lonelier, more isolating tendencies. Arcturus encourages us to open up and be friendly and look at the bright side, try to find the bright side in everything that we can. So taking a look at our election for this Arcturus fixed star talisman, Arcturus is at 24 degrees Libra, so we put that degree on the midheaven here, and then we have the moon apply to that as closely as we can. And while she's doing that, we also want the moon to be in an aspect to a planet who is of the nature of Arcturus. And Arcturus is a star that is of the nature of Jupiter and Mars. And so thankfully at this time, the moon is applying a sextile to Mars at the end of Sagittarius. So kind of everything is good as far as that's concerned. Next, we look to the ruler of the first house, which is Saturn, because Capricorn rises. Saturn is here in the second house in Aquarius, which is nice. It's not afflicted by Mars. It's not afflicted by the sun, but we are getting kind of close to the combustion area. So Saturn, as a contributor to planetary or to elections in general, will start to fade out for the next couple of weeks until it moves on the other side of the sun. So after we get to like that 7.5 degree mark between the sun and Saturn, we're done with Saturn for a while until we get to it on the other side. But the moon, again, is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn as well. The moon's, doing well. We don't have any kind of serious afflictions happening with this chart, any of our key players. So just a kind of your standard nice fixed star election opportunity to take advantage of. So to continue my saga of the missing 22nd Lunar Mansion election, for the Western European version, I thought that there wasn't going to be one because I had wrote down the wrong information, and it turns out I wrote down the information for the North American version because it looks a little bit different in the Western European version where it can't work. So, mystery solved. So yes, that means that our third and our final election for the North American continent is going to be for a 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman. This takes place on January 29th at 8:41 a.m. So the 22nd Lunar Mansion is a mansion that is primarily associated with escape, with the attainment of freedom, with the escape from illness and injury, suppression of rumors, those kinds of things. And while I have in the past usually just associated the 22nd Lunar Mansion with the waxing phase of the moon, with the gain of freedom, with the increase in health kind of a thing, I have more recently come to respect the 22nd Lunar Mansion as a force for both waxing and waning to more or less obtain the same things, which I guess is fitting, something I should have realized sooner, after like the very obvious mercurial symbolism that takes place in the 22nd Lunar Mansion, and how Mercury as a planet also kind of plays this duality of positive and negative, masculine and feminine kind of a thing. Obviously, it's a lunar mansion that is so in tune with its symbolism would be able to do something similar, being able to be appropriate or useful in both waxing and waning contexts. So I'm going to keep an eye out more for the 22nd Lunar Mansion in waning moon contexts, just because I feel like we could just as easily and just as safely utilize the 22nd Lunar Mansion and its powers of escape in the waning moon phase, where, the waning moon phase is much more associated with like, with sneaking almost, with like invisibility, with trying to hide, which I think can be a really great manifestation, or maybe not manifestation, but like modality almost, method of a 22nd Lunar Mansion working. It like you sort of slipping away kind of a thing. So in our election here, we've got the moon in the 22nd, no, not that one. We've got the moon in the 22nd Lunar Mansion. She's not as angular as I generally would like her to be, because she cannot be. When she's on the midheaven in this location, she will already pass the conjunction with Mars, which would not necessarily be a bad thing, because then she would be applying to Jupiter. But our problem would be then Jupiter would be in the 12th house, and I don't do the ruler of the 1st and the 12th. So that's kind of what we're balancing here with this chart. So at this point, the moon is applying the conjunction with Mars, and generally malefic planets would be something that I would avoid in this kind of context. But just because Mars is very well placed in Capricorn, I don't want to dismiss it out of hand, being aware of the sort of transformation into like an accidental benefic that Mars can undergo in this kind of situation. So I think that that a talisman built around this kind of Mars moon conjunction would be really great in giving oneself the courage to move forward, giving oneself the courage to to allow oneself to escape. Because it can be frightening, of course, moving out of whatever kind of situation you feel caught in, whether that's, just like getting fed up with a job and quitting that you don't feel respected in, that you feel stuck in. It takes courage to do. So I think this kind of election could be very helpful for that. I also really enjoy Jupiter as a ruler of the first house conjunct the ascendant here as sort of like more of a stabilizing and providing presence. So I definitely recommend this talisman or this election to anybody who feels kind of stuck in something, to give them kind of like the courage and the opportunity to move past it. All right, so that was all for our North American elections for this waning moon period. Now we're going to move into our Australian elections, and Australia, I think, actually has some of the better ones this time around. So lucky you. So our first election opportunity for Australia is going to be on January 25th at 6:24 a.m., so just before 6:30, and this is going to be an opportunity for a 16th Lunar Mansion talisman. So the 16th Lunar Mansion is one that is primarily about like the manipulation of money. Generally, within like waxing moon contexts, we create 26 Lunar Mansion. We create 16th Lunar Mansion talismans to make money, to make more money, to make more sales, to increase profits. In the waning moon period, why do I keep calling the 26th Lunar Mansion? The 16th Lunar Mansion in a waning moon context is more about renegotiating. It's more about giving back or paying things off. So it can be really useful for somebody who is struggling to pay down debts to make a 16th Lunar Mansion talisman I almost called it the 26th Lunar Mansion talisman again. To assist them in this payback process. It can also be really useful for somebody who's trying to like negotiate rates, or who is applying for like loan forgiveness or like debt consolidation, or any sort of like renegotiation process like refinancing, that can help to pay back loans, to get like debts off of your back. While also kind of keeping as much money for yourself as possible. So I really like this application of the 16th Lunar Mansion when we get good opportunities for it. So taking a look at our election, we have the moon placed here in the 16th Lunar Mansion conjunct the midheaven, and the moon is actually at the very end of the 16th Lunar Mansion. I think it goes until like 25 degrees and 42 minutes. So really close to the end here, but that shouldn't matter so much because once the moon kind of moves off of angularity, it's really not that great of an election anymore anyway, and that will definitely happen before the moon moves out of the mansion. Also at this time, the moon is applying this sextile to Mars in Capricorn, and I think this is a good energy to have with this, just sort of like giving oneself the sort of like dynamic force to be able to negotiate effectively. And kind of get things done that way. Mars is also a planet that is more associated with spending than with savings or like hoarding. So I think makes a good energy for a talisman that is more about getting rid of debts, just kind of like scattering them to the wind kind of a thing. Taking a look at our ruler of the first house, we have Saturn here as ruler of the first house in the first house in Aquarius, getting closer to the combustion of the sun, but not there yet for us to have to, worry about or dismiss it as an effective ruler of the first house. So we can definitely use this. The first house is not, like the ascendant is not afflicted by Mars per se, or we'll say, not per se. The ascendant is not afflicted by Mars. There's nothing, going on with it. The sun is there. I'm a little more iffy about the retrograde Mercury can join the ascendant, but overall I don't think it's a deal breaker for it. And I actually kind of like that the sun is the ruler of the 8th house placed in the first house. So if this is going to be a talisman that's used more for clearing out debts or things like that, I think that's very appropriate. So all in all, just a pretty kind of a standard election. I guess a little bit of a different flavor of what we normally look for with 16 Lunar Mansion talismans. But that's okay, because the whole purpose of Lunar Mansions, the whole point of them, is that they are a little bit more flexible than some of the others. So our second electional opportunity for the Australian continent is actually later that same day, January 25th, this time at 11:03 a.m. And this is an opportunity for a Mars planetary talisman. I was very excited to find it, just because we have like 3 planets in strong dignity of all the outer planets. Mars is in Capricorn, Jupiter is in Pisces, Saturn is in Aquarius. So I was like, where are the planetary talismans? Because I haven't been able to find any. I wasn't able to find any for Western Europe and North America, so primarily because I couldn't get day and hour lords to work out, which is usually where our main hurdle lies. But for the Australian continent, I was able to get a Mars planetary talisman setup, which I think looks pretty good. So I definitely recommend all of you down under to take advantage of it if you can. In our election chart, we have Mars in Capricorn, conjunct the midheaven. So we've got our target planet angular in a sign that it does well in. At this time, the moon is applying a sextile to Mars and Capricorn here, and we have the ruler of the first house. Also, as Mars in Capricorn, who is unafflicted. The moon is unafflicted. It's a Tuesday, so it's Mars's day. So basically, just all of our boxes are checked for what we primarily look for in planetary talismans. There's nothing really in here that would dissuade me from making this. If it were my talisman, the only unideal thing, I think, is that the moon is in Libra in the chart instead of like Scorpio. That would make it perfect. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, which is essentially that's like the secret weapon, the secret lesson for like electional astrology in general, is don't get so caught up on the perfect thing that you miss out on good things. And this is definitely a good thing. So definitely take advantage of this Mars planetary talisman. If you've been looking for one, if you've been doing, Mars planetary work or remedial work, this could be a really great opportunity to pick up. Our third electional chart for the Australian continent is going to be for January 30th, this time at just before 11:30. This chart is set for 11:26. And this is going to be an opportunity for a 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman. The 22nd Lunar Mansion is one that is primarily focused on escape and freedom. Escape from, drudgery, escape from difficult or dangerous situations, escape from illness and pain. It has some healing properties to it as well. And also the escape from, I guess, like rumors. I'm sure there's a word for that that's better than that encapsulates the energy better than that, but that's what I'm going to go for right now at this moment in time, since I cannot think of the other one. So generally, I tend to look at the 22nd Lunar Mansion as a more waxing moon mansion. It's about gaining freedom, gaining health. But I've also come to think that the 22nd Lunar Mansion is one that can operate just as well in a waning moon context. This time leaning more into like the escape, the throwing off, like the casting off the shackles, the letting go of these things, that I think is also appropriate for this. So that's what we're going to kind of lean into for this, is the escape from things, the getting rid of things, the letting go of things. And so in this election chart here, we have the moon placed in the 22nd Lunar Mansion, conjoined the midheaven, and she's applying the conjunction with Venus. Venus is a benefic planet, and this is a little bit of a different flavor from the 22nd Lunar Mansions that we saw in North America and Western Europe, which had the application actually to the conjunction of Mars. The Australian version of this, I think, is much better, because while the North America and the Western European and North Africa versions focused on like an internal boldness, almost like the courage to move forward, the courage to take a chance, almost like the courage to let yourself be free, basically. This one is much more of like a cushion, we'll say. This is like the safety net, because at this time the moon is venerated by Jupiter and Venus. So if you're familiar at all with kind of like classical astrological terminology, you'll definitely be familiar with the idea of like besiegement, where the moon is caught between two difficult aspects of the malefic planets. Like the moon is, in between the conjunction of Mars and Saturn. It's like a classic besiegement. It's very bad. Veneration is the other side of that. It's the benefic version of it, where the moon is venerated by, she's cushioned by benefic planets. And that's what's happening here. The moon's last aspect was a sextile to Jupiter, and now her next aspect is a conjunction with Venus. So she's venerated by, she's caught in the conjunction between these two planets, securing her position, giving her like a shield basically on both sides. So I think this is a much better version of the 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman Australia. So if you are at all stuck in a situation where you feel unsafe, unappreciated, unable to move forward, definitely think about using this talisman to help you move forward, to help you cut out of that, out of those feelings or out of that situation, to move on to something much better that you much more deserve to be a part of. So our fourth election for Australia, and our final election for both the Australian continent and our video today, is going to be for just a few minutes later after that 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman, this time at 11:48 a.m., still on January 30th. And this is going to be an opportunity for a Vega fixed star talisman. Vega is a star that is primarily associated with spiritual protection, the shielding against negative energies, malefic entities, or attachments. And it is also utilized for individuals who suffer from like sleep disorders, things like sleep paralysis or like chronic nightmares. Vega can also be very useful for. Vega is also useful for people who are involved in like more exorcism type practices, and I've also liked to use Vega a lot for cleansing of like ritual objects, of anything like that. Vega's powers to banish and remove negative gunk out of a thing is very strong and definitely worth keeping as a tool to be more effective in those goals, in those practices. So taking a look at our election, Vega is placed at 15 degrees Capricorn. You want the moon to be applying to that star and also applying to a planet that's of the nature of that star. Vega is a star of the nature of Mercury and Venus. So while the moon is moving to the conjunction of Vega at 15 degrees Capricorn, she's also conjunct Venus. This conjunction with Venus helps us facilitate a much stronger connection to the fixed star Vega because there's a similarity, there's a similitude between these two bodies in the astrological tradition. At the same time, we want to make sure that the ruler of the first house is not afflicted, or that the first house itself is not afflicted. And there's no, bad aspect from Saturn here. Sextiles are fine. The Mars is also not afflicted by Saturn or the Sun, anything like that. All in all, a really good election. A really kind of surprise election. I wasn't expecting to find it. But this just kind of rounds out, I guess, Australia's really cool 2-week period where they'll have like a 16th Lunar Mansion talisman, a 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman, a fixed star talisman, and a planetary talisman. They kind of have like got something for everything. So a lot of fun practices to be had in Australia this 2-week period. But that is all that I have for you guys today for our Cancer full moon. Some really great stuff to find. Really glad to have some more things to talk about, to use during waning moon periods, which tend to be a little bit more sleepy, just because a lot of the focus in talismanic magic is about gain and increase. But it's important to pay respect to the more giving back, to the more waning energies when we have a chance to. So I'm really glad to be able to share those with you when I can. But everybody take care, and I will see you all again on the Aquarius New Moon.